You're back at Deal Flow. Ryan right here as always, and my guest I think has, to my knowledge, the largest Twitter following in the M&A space for what you do. I mean, there's like SMB attorney who I think has you beat, but you're kind of the Twitter legend. Is that right, Clint?
I don't know if I'm at that status, but it's been good to me for sure. It's I just joined, a little over 2 years ago,
Mhm.
but I don't think there was a lot of brokers kind of on their storytelling and teaching, and there's a ton of buyers and a ton of interested parties that weren't hearing from kind of my side of the table, and I think
Mhm.
that resonated with folks, and people were eager to hear, what I had to say and learn about the sell side of transactions, and so yeah, I just kind of went crazy posting a bunch and people responded and it's been pretty life changing.
Okay, well, for those of us all on Twitter, but for people not on Twitter, maybe give a 30-second background, who you are, where you're at in the space, and what you do, and we'll get into a little bit more detail after that.
Sure. Yeah, my name's Clint Fiore. My handle is at Clint Fiore, CLINTFIORE. I own a company called Bison Business. We help people buy and sell companies. I've been doing M&A or business brokerage, whatever you want to call it, for about 10 years. And I was kind of a serial entrepreneur originally. I started and sold a couple companies and discovered that I liked the transaction side and the deal making side a little bit more than running companies side of things, and decided to stop being a startup entrepreneur and help other people with established companies uh, exit their businesses successfully. So I help people value their companies, market companies for sale, negotiate deals, and help buyers and sellers every step of the way. And then I've grown a small team around me that we all work together as a team. Several of my teammates are just great people. Um, and then they're, today largely responsible for doing, 90% of the deal work for our firm, letting me go on podcasts like I am today and tweet and teach and speak around the industry. And then I just kind of work with a few select clients and then help bring in opportunities to our team. And we just kind of have like a high tech, high touch, highly high success rate way that we broker deals. And it's just making good deals with good people, and that's what we like to do. And I just like to teach about it every step of the way. So I'm kind of an open book, man. If you whatever you want to talk to your audience um about any stage of this process, I'll share all the inside baseball knowledge that I have and let them have it.
Well, it's funny because I remember watching you kind of ascend I don't know where you're at now at 40, 50,000 followers or whatever. The Great Bot Purge might have got you some. I don't know. But I remember watching you like, man, this guy's really coming from nowhere from the perspective of Twitter, at least, and just shooting up. And back then it was tough for me because we had some contracts with some stuff that wasn't really related to what we do now. And we had some other stuff. And I never really, my previous life, if you will, leveraging Twitter for that kind of work wasn't really valuable. And so it was encouraging for someone like me to watch your Twitter growth going, okay, if you just focus in on what you do know. And there's kind of a misconception. I don't know who it was the other day. They're talking about you're talking to people who are 2 years behind you at times. You don't have to be 10 years of where you're not at, but just where you're at now, because there's a lot of people who are trying to figure out how to get to where you are. Obviously, you've been in the
Mhm.
space for 10 years. I think you do a good job of communicating to people who are, 2 years behind, but also maybe 7, 8, 9, 10 years behind as well.
Yeah, totally. I'm not. I freely tell people like I don't think I'm even the best broker in the world or anything like that. I just might be the best at tweeting, but I'm not. Like I have lots of peers I respect in this space that I learned from. I'm in part of several mastermind groups with some of the best ones in the country.
Mm.
I just got off a mastermind call with some of the top brokers in the country. I'm always learning from them. And, I just kind of try to live with an abundance mindset that, the more we share, the more we teach, the more it kind of establishes you as a thought leader, I guess, in your space, and the more opportunities it generates. And so, uh, you know, unlike a lot of quote unquote influencers out there that are getting paid for, they're trying to get paid for the information. I have a very open book business model where it's like we get mainly paid for transaction work, and we put out in my opinion, some of the better free information out there in order to attract opportunities for transaction work down the line. And I hear from people all the time that say, "Yeah, I've been following you for years. I've learned a ton. I'm finally ready to do a deal. Let's work together." And that's what it's all about. To me, that's a lot more fun getting those people in to work with our firm than just trying to do pay-per-click advertising to get somebody in the door that's never heard of us before or something like that. So I think that teaching is where it's at, and leading with content's where it's at to form a successful inbound lead flow nowadays.
Well, you had a tweet this morning, maybe yesterday, and we'll link to your Twitter profile in the show notes, talking about the bad brokers out there. And it was funny because I saw that, and then I got on a call with a prospective client who's an M&A advisor, and they were going on and on about how most people aren't closing deals. They talk like they are. They're just flipping over listings and stuff like that. And it's interesting because in what we do, we have come across a couple of people. I mean, I've talked to some like I hadn't closed a deal in 18 months. It's like, well, okay, I don't know how I got 25 listings. It's like, yeah, you're not a good fit for what we're trying to do. But maybe let's just start there because I do have some things about why it's hard to sell a business. But for people who are listening, they go, okay, how do I evaluate a good broker or an M&A advisor? How do I even start that process to determine, who is actually qualified? Because a nice website can, I mean, we got to a deal with a trucking company for one of our groups. They do like 90 million top line revenue. Their website's garbage. So websites aren't always a good indicator of how competent the people are. But if you're really good at marketing, you can do smoke and mirrors. So if I'm a seller, how would you tell me to evaluate someone like you?
So, I in tweets and things, it's you have to be so brief in what you say that it's sometimes easy to get misconstrued. So sometimes I'll say bad broker, good broker. There's obviously like gray. There's a lot of spectrum here, but I think that there's kind of two types of what I would say bad in brokerage. One is essentially not being good at their job, which a lot of it I think comes down to quality control standards not being high. And then there's kind of a second kind of bad, which what I was tweeting about this morning, which is there's some actually bad firms that I think have unethical practices of how they do business. And there's a couple of large firms that are very aggressive in their marketing and very good in front getting in front of thousands of business owners that I think their business model is let's put our best salesmen up front, have them do seminars, have them promise the world to sellers, but kind of just tell them what they want to hear, which generally means overvaluing their companies knowingly in order to seduce them into paying a large upfront fee. And I think that the worst of the worst brokers are making more money off of upfront fees by building their pitch book and selling the dream of selling their business than versus ones that are closing deals to make their living. And so to me, those are the worst kinds of brokers. I think those are kind of predatory shops, and those are out there, and they give our industry a really bad name if they're making more money um, upfront fees than they are on success fees at closing. But then there's another kind of what I would say bad broker, which is it's almost just like they're so desperate for deals that they'll take on any listing and price it at any price that the seller wants to run it at. And that's the other thing that I think gives brokerage a bad name is generally like overpriced deals with um, scant information. So it's kind of like a spaghetti at the wall approach. And there's many, somewhat legitimate brokers that they're just starting out or they take a numbers game approach where it's like, you know what? I know it's going to be hard to sell for 2 million. The seller really wants 2 million. I think it's a million value, but hey, I work for the seller. I'll just put it out there for 2 million, see what happens. Maybe we'll get an offer that they'll take, or maybe the seller will let me reduce the price down the road. And they kind of just put out overpriced listings and let them sit. And they figure if I get enough of them, some will sell. Like some will sell, some won't. So what? Move on to the next. And it's this very kind of callous, thick skin numbers game approach to brokerage. And a lot of brokers take that tact And I think that gives brokers a very bad name. And I think there's a lot more of those type than the predatory type. They're not necessarily bad people. They're just not good at setting the right valuation expectations. I think pricing is probably the main differentiator between the good and the bad on brokerage. And so it's a very tough skill to be able to persuade a seller who's this is their baby, their heart and soul. Like they built up this business usually from scratch, poured their whole life's work into it. They think it's worth a whole lot, and you think it's worth substantially less than they think it's worth, and getting them to believe you about their own baby and trust you enough to go to market at a price that's reasonable, that's bankable, that's sellable. And I think the best brokers, that's the master skill, is like tactfully popping the valuation bubble for sellers to get them to, in their own best interest, to go to market at a doable asking price and get it done, move on down the road. And I think if you're talking to brokers, the magic questions are the KPIs, the key performance indicators you want to know to determine um, if it's a broker you want to work with as a seller, is I would ask them for their closing rate. And so that would, you might call it a sell through rate or a closing rate. But how many listings did you take on last year? And how many did you close? Like that's the ratio of engagements you sign up versus closings you close at an acceptable price and terms to the seller equals a great broker. I know several, myself included, that we shoot for about 90%. So like I think anybody that's in that 70, 80, 90% success rate, they're setting realistic expectations. They're taking good deals to market. They're doing good justice to them, marketing them well, and getting it done and focusing on giving great service. The spaghetti at the wall folks that put massive quantities of often overpriced deals and take that some will sell, some won't. So what approach? Their success rate is usually 20 to 30%, and they will be very hesitant to actually tell you their numbers. So they might brag about, well, we've got 100 listings. We got way more than Clint and Bison do. Or we've got, or they'll brag about, hey, we closed X amount of deals, but they won't tell you about the 80% that went away disillusioned because, they never got the attention. They never got priced right. They didn't do a great job. So if I'm interviewing a broker, I'm looking for what's their success rate? And then I'm also looking for their professional credentials. Like, do they have valuation credentials? Do they have the CBI designation, the Certified Business Intermediary designation from the IBBA, or a state designation from their state brokerage group, or the CMNAP, or other like professional designations that show that they're taking this as a full-time serious profession, investing in their education in this space from the world-class industry leaders. And so I think if you've got like an experienced broker, high success rate, has closed a lot of deals similar to yours, and have those professional designations and high odds, you've got a high value broker
Mm.
that's going to shoot you straight and get your deal done properly.
Yeah, it's interesting because we talked to a group last year, and this guy did two, three, maybe four deals a year. He closed them all, but he knew exactly the buyer pool. He knew how to value the companies. And so for him, the success rate was, 100% because he only took on very, very, very targeted deals to ensure that he could close them. And so that is definitely a metric. It seems that to your point about the sellers, um, the ones that we hear from that are kind of leery, they have been pitched high in the sky and building that trust early on, saying, yeah, I can do this. No, I can't do this. I think a lot of brokers would do themselves a better service if they were honest early on and they'd build the trust because most sellers that we talk to, they don't understand this process. They don't understand what's involved. And so they just kind of know you can sell your business somehow, some way. But they don't really understand, we almost never bring up EBITDA unless it comes up on a bigger deal. We almost never use that term. My joke is redneck to redneck. We just talk to them and try to build
Mhm.
trust. I think a lot of brokers are trying to get listings because they need money. It is a long-term sales process. But they'd probably in the long run be better upfront saying, yeah, I shouldn't take this on because I can't get you, a 10x for a service company that's, in Granbury, Texas doing. Not a lot of revenue on an annual basis.
I tell new brokers, you make more money saying no than saying yes. You'll make more money running sellers off than taking them on.
Hmm.
And historically, I would say probably two-thirds to three-quarters of sellers that come to our firm, we end up not engaging with, usually because evaluation mismatch. We do so good at teaching them why we have our opinion. So that situation I talked about in the beginning, I think it's worth 1 million. They think they want 2 million. I'm not the broker that's going to put it out there with a $2 million asking price. I will say, all right, Mr. Seller, here's why it's worth 1 million. And I will tell them five different ways of looking at it. All arrows point to the largest defendable, bankable price that we can possibly stretch this to is 1 million. And here's why. And I'll teach them the market approach to value, the debt service coverage ratio math, the income approach to value, the asset approach to value, like all the different ways we can look at this and how appraisers are going to look at it and banks and buyers are going to look at it and what their math looks like on the other side of the table. And once I've sufficiently kind of beat them up with all those facts and figures of, I would love to get you 2 million, but there's just no way the math works for anyone on the other side of the table at 2 million. But here's what you need to do. If you want to get 2 million, go back to work, make your company look like this, and then call me back. And I'll get you 2 million when we can defend 2 million and get it done. And so a lot of times that 75% that goes away, it's not on bad terms. It's just they needed to be educated. They didn't know what they didn't know. And so I think a no or not yet is a way better result than a let's try and see what happens to a deal that you know is not going to happen.
Yeah. Okay, so that brings up the most obvious question. Is it really that hard to sell your business? Like I mean, so if you know the valuation somehow, is it really, do you really need a broker, an advisor to sell your business? Is it really that hard?
Yeah, it is. Like all we do, all I've done for almost a decade is sell businesses, and we track a lot of data around here. And so when I look at like I have staff that helps me, we work together as a team on deals. When I look at how many deals we're running and how much time are we working, and I do back into the math of like how many hours per deal did we spend with our payroll and with our staff. It's 400 to 800 hours on average. So like the biggest thing I would tell sellers is to do this right. It's a full-time job. And so like most sellers are already working five full-time jobs trying to spin all the plates they need to running a business. And learning and doing all the things you need to learn and do to properly sell your business is another full-time job. And so that's why I think it's worth hiring a professional that can give it their full attention, um, quarterbacking your deal and bringing their team behind you to help is because first off, it's time consuming. Secondly, this is the hardest one to express to sellers, but everyone acts like they're not emotional, but everyone's emotional. And selling a business is one of the most emotional things most sellers will ever do in their life. I mean, it's extremely difficult. A lot of people have their, it's they say, well, my blood, sweat, and tears are into this thing, and they say those words because it essentially means like part of my identity is wrapped up in this thing. And then the second you have people on the other side of the table and they're smart ass CPA or land or or somebody pops off about how your stuff isn't worth what you think it is or whatever, it starts to feel like a personal attack. You get defensive, you dig in, you dig your heels in, and your deal is going to blow up over something silly because you're too close to it emotionally. And having a professional broker that's paid to do deals for a living that can anticipate those problems, soften those blows, come up with creative solutions to solve those when people start to dig in their heels over various parts of the negotiation. it maximizes the odds of success. When you try to DIY this and you don't know how to solve problems 100 different ways that a professional deal maker does, and you're too emotional to it, even if you find a buyer you like and they make an offer you like, you have probably a 70 to 80% chance of not closing because something's going to derail your deal between LOI and closing, and you're not going to be able to save it. And you're going to have spent hundreds of hours, months of your life, and a whole lot of emotional energy for a deal that didn't happen. And then you might end up with like a business even less valuable if that caused you to take your eye off the ball because you were so focused on trying to close that deal that you weren't able to keep your business running at the proper level. And so I think the best way to go about it is generally to keep running your company, keep growing your company, because that's going to keep that growth curve going, which is going to maximize your value. Let a pro handle the deal negotiation and marketing and filtering of candidates on your behalf. And that you just running, staying fully focused on running your business is going to create a deal that's worth substantially more than the broker costs. And the broker is going to do a better job at getting a competitive environment going with multiple buyers, negotiating well, not being as emotionally attached to it, and be able to drive the best deal at the same time. So it's really like a cooperative process. You keep running your business, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. Let us run your deal, and we'll rope you into the right meetings because you do have to meet these buyers at some point, and they have to like and trust you, and we'll facilitate that part. But everything else, all the heavy lifting of this, you're going to have a pro team that knows what they're doing, helping you along the way.
Yeah, I remember years ago when I was in, I'm still in real estate, I guess, property management, but helping, buying and selling homes. I went to someone's house and they said, "Yeah, I put these cabinets in by hand and I did all this stuff by hand." And they give me this big spiel and I told them the value of their house and it was, I don't know, 20, 30,000, 40,000 less than what they thought it was. And they're like, "Oh my gosh. Well, these cabinets are," I'm like, right, but still the value is the value. That's what the market report says. And the business is 100x that, right? Because it's not just some
Yeah.
cabinets you put in, it's all the hiring, all the firing, all the struggling to make payroll. And so you are right. It's far, far, far more emotional. Um, I know we got just a few minutes here. So let's see here. On Twitter, everyone says look for 1 to 2 million EBITDA companies. That's the big thing. We talk about that on the podcast a lot. We don't have time to get into that today. But if you're a seller, you're below 1 million EBITDA, is it worth looking at selling your company, assuming that there's not some pressing need that you need to sell? Like just generally, I'm looking to transition out. Can you sell below 1 million EBITDA?
Sure. Every day companies are sold. I will say the multiples start climbing when you hit 1 million and even when you hit 2 million. I feel like there's um, kind of different categories of buyers that are have a little bit deeper pockets, they have more money and less deals to go around, and so supply and demand dictates that prices start going up above certain levels. But the decision to sell, whether you're selling for 2x, 5x, 8x, like it never really mathematically makes sense because you can always say, even at like an 8x, which would be a eye-watering, a phenomenal multiple for most business owners of 1 million EBITDA companies would love. They would die to get that high of a multiple. You could still make the argument, why sell? You could just
Right.
keep running it for 8 years and you'll make all that money. And then if you grow it a little bit, maybe you'll even get a higher multiple in 8 years. And so why sell? Like it makes no sense. And so mathematically, why sell is it always comes down to a personal reason. And so I think the time to sell is going to be like one of a few different scenarios. One is the obvious, I'm just too old. I'm burned out. I can't keep doing this anymore. My health and my time with my family is taking precedence over maximizing every dollar in my life right now. And so there's the age. But there's also opportunity cost to running a business. A business is an all-consuming thing for most entrepreneurs that really takes a lion's share of your attention. And sometimes we sell businesses for people. Like we have one right now in Houston that we're selling, and this guy has two or three businesses. He's a serial entrepreneur. He's selling a really good business that's making, I don't know, 500,000 in earnings because another one he started is growing much faster, and it's got him a lot more excited. And he feels like he could do both, but focusing his energy on this other one that's more exciting and is growing faster is gonna he's gonna be able to more quickly grow. And so for him, it's just allocation of his energy and his resources and his time. And so some people sell kind of when they just have like a better use of their time, or they've got it to a level where they know they're not going to be growing it as quickly anymore, and it's kind of like they're not getting as much ROI on their time reflected in the financials and the growth rate of the company. And you might say, you know, it's perfect time. I grew it to a level where it's currently on a plateau, where I can see a plateau coming. Let's hand the baton off to somebody that is all about this. That's going to be able to take it up to the next level, and then let me pull those chips off the table and chase a new dream that's more suited to my skill set or my chapter of life that I'm in right now. But there's always got to be like a, a trade that's worth it to you personally. And a lot of times it comes down to, do I have a better use of my time, or do I have a better use of this capital that's locked up in the goodwill value of this company, that if I pull it out, I've got something that would even make my life better that I can do with it. And so when you kind of mentally get to one of those places, whether it's through age of retirement or opportunity costs of time or capital, that you think you've got a better option, then it's time to think about running a process and selling it and moving on.
Yeah, there's a book, Messy Marketplace, I think is what it's called. I got it somewhere around here.
The
And he
Messy
unpacks
Marketplace by
what's it
Brent
called?
B. Shore.
Is it Messy
Brent's book,
Marketplace?
The Messy Marketplace.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And he unpacks that exactly like, hey, you need to think about in these terms because everyone thinks I'm going to sell my business and I'm going to and you might make a bunch of money. I'm not saying that, but mathematically speaking, to your point, you could theoretically make more money, same money over a certain amount of time. Of course, there's COVID hits or something crazy. There's all kinds of stuff that could stop that. So it is a tough process. Okay, where can people find you? We're gonna link to your stuff on Twitter, your website. Are you anywhere? I think you're on LinkedIn too and Facebook. And where are you at so people can connect with you?
Yeah, I'm on most social platforms under my name, Clint Fiore, Clintfiore. And my company is called Bison Business. It's bisonbusiness.com. If you're interested in selling a business and just want to have a confidential conversation about it, just to kind of ballpark where your value is, talk about timing and strategy, we're glad to have that conversation with you. If you're a buyer and you want to get early notice of deals we're bringing to market, because we do bring great stuff to market every month, make sure you go to bisonbusiness.com and get on our email list. Or another place is probably a gooddeal.com, which is kind of our deal newsletter website. So where we send out deals from our firm and sometimes other firms as well. So probably a good deal is my email newsletter. And so you can check that out, or just go to Bison Business and we'll take care of you.
Awesome. And it's probably a good deal on Substack.
Beehive, yeah.
Oh, it's on Beehive. Okay. I thought it
Yeah.
was on Substack. I'm gonna say we could link to it on Substack, but never mind. You're over there with Beehive. 5Y.biz where you can find this podcast or anywhere else. Clint, thank you so much. I will say I had hoped to meet you sooner because I was wanting to go to Kilimanjaro. I didn't get to go. I saw it was a fantastic trip. Any big trips next year planned, or was that a one-time deal?
We're gonna do another. I think we're gonna do a 2025. We're calling it SM Bucket List, so it's like a play on SMB and Bucket List. But we we had such a successful trip going to Tanzania and climbing Kilimanjaro. 12 people from all from Twitter pretty much
Mhm.
met up and did a once in a lifetime climbing of the tallest mountain in Africa, and went on a couple days of safari together and just had an awesome trip. So yeah, I'm just gonna use that as an excuse to cross off bucket list items in my life and bring business friends along the way. And we're probably going to do one in 2025, and probably Argentina is going to be the next. So we're starting to lay the groundwork for that. But just follow me on on the socials, and when the interest list opens up for that, be sure to jump on it.
Okay, I'm gonna put this out there. Do with it as you will. Running with the Bulls in 2025. Like it's the most perfect thing for what we do.
That is.
So, okay, Clint, thank you so much for your time today. Uh, love
Awesome.
talking to you and learning from you.
All right, great to see you, man.